Welcome back, everybody, to Season 2 of Chasing the Rut, presented by Wild Faith. This series is about real-time whitetail hunting, the tactics, the timings, and the stories that unfold as the season comes alive. Through October and November, we're chasing the highs and lows of the rut, sharing what we're seeing in the woods, and bringing on experienced hunters to help you make the most of your time out in the stand. Whether you're grinding it out on public land, hanging cameras on your home farm, or waiting for that first cold front to hit, this show is built for you. It's the week of October 13th, and we're right on the tail end of what a lot of hunters call the October lull. Seems like deer movement's been hit or miss, crops are coming out, bucks are shifting out of their summer and early fall patterns, and you can feel things starting to change. In this first episode of the season, we're rolling back to a few powerful conversations from past guests that really hit home for both Luke and I, and that focus on this time of year. You'll hear from Dan Johnson, Shane Simpson, and Cody Butler, three guys who live and breathe this stuff each and every fall, and each of them brings a different perspective on how to approach October, where to hunt, when to strike, and how to stay patient when it feels like nothing's happening. Kicking things off for us, we have one of the best voices in the outdoor industry. We have Dan Johnson from the Sportsman's Empire and the host of the Nine Finger Chronicles podcast. Dan shares how he approaches October by focusing on terrain, sign, and real-time conditions out in the woods, keeping things simple and letting the woods tell him where to hunt. After that, we'll have Shane Simpson, a hunter and a tracker who spent countless hours in the timber, and Shane talks about reading fresh sign, adapting to when food sources change, and staying flexible as deer shift into their later fall patterns. And finally, closing things out, we got Cody Butler joining us to talk about discipline and timing, and knowing when to hunt and when not to, and that can make all the difference as the season starts to heat up. We got three hunters, three different perspectives, all focused on helping you make the most of your October. Enjoy.
I'm sure you're probably similar weather to what we got going on up here as far as cold front kind of pushing in. What are you kind of focusing in on where, like you said, now that you have kids, it's kind of harder to get out sometimes. What are those key, flashing lights on the weather app that's like, I need to be out in the woods?
Like I just started. Just started checking my 10-day forecast.
Yep.
Okay? So, man, I'll be honest. I take my out of state hunt in early October, depending on what it is. Sometimes in September if I'm going to do an elk hunt. But this year it was the first week of October. Then I come back home and all I do is monitor trail cameras and shoot my bow. Man, I'll be honest with you. My schedule. I'm a coach, so I volunteer coach. I coach football. I coach baseball.
Nice.
In the past, I've coached soccer. It sounds like this spring I'm going to be coaching my other son's flag football team. So it's all family until prime time. And so I have one more football practice and one more game left, and then it's go time. And go time, my first hunt should be Friday, November 1st is when I'm out. And then I hate to say it, but my wife becomes that fall widow. And I go and I hunt as hard as humanly possible. She's the same. Yep. I hunt as hard as humanly possible, and then I kill my deer, and then I come home and we pick right back up. Right.
Yep.
This year I have another rut hunt. So I'm hunting Iowa. Hopefully I connect. Then I'm coming back home for a couple days, and then I'm going to Kansas.
Ooh,
sweet. But I will say this. I am going out this Friday. Okay. And it's less about getting into the tree stand and hunting and putting some big elaborate strategy together for a big buck. It's more of a data mission, an intel.
Sure.
And so I'm going to my main farm that I've hunted for like 17 years now. And I am going to pull trail cameras. So I have some cell cameras. They send me data every day, but I also hunt a big river bottom where there's no cell service.
Right.
So I have there's 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 trail cameras that I am really interested in seeing what's on them. So as I'm going in, I might as well check those cameras and switch out my SD cards, hunt one night, come back home, check them. And then what the goal there is to see the caliber of deer that are running around and compare them to both farms.
Sure.
Okay. And so if I have really good deer on one farm, I'm going to go hunt that farm. I'm going to put an effort in there. If that goes south, then I'll go to the other farm. But it's just gathering data to see which farm I want to kick it off to first. And then that's where I'm going.
Nice.
So, you know, with that too, and just kind of, you know, just listening to your podcast through years and just kind of your style of hunting and stuff too, so, you know, looking at these next 3 weeks here, because I mean, it's kind of, we're on the cusp of like where it's finally go time now. Are you working off of a lot of historical data for those two farms too, of having, you know, and I've heard you talk about a little bit about it where, you know, there's a deer that has been gone, shows back up on the exact same date. Is anything like that, like circumstance happen at all?
Yeah. I mean, that stuff does happen, but am I really focused on it? No. Here's what I believe. I believe we as hunters really overthink a lot of this. I mean,
for sure,
we really do. Can you track down a buck and him disappear, and then he comes back, you know, a year later on the same date, come through a property? Yes, that happens. It happens every year for me and for, you know, hundreds of thousands of people probably that are out in the woods. With that said, my main focus is getting into the best possible terrain feature that I can, the best staging area where edge meets thick, you know, where thick timber, thick edge meets open timber, looking for sign, looking for, and it's not something where it's an individual. Like, I don't go into the woods looking just for sign. I like to match up sign with edge, or sign with edge with bedding area, with a creek crossing, with trail, with a destination food source, with oak trees, with wind direction, like thermals. Like, it's just this, in my brain, I'm not smart, but it's like a hamster wheel in my head. And it's just this little guy where he doesn't work at all throughout the entire year until late October. And he starts to go, and he's like, okay, all right, wind direction, cold, you know, temperature. Okay, this tree stand. Okay, well, can't do that. That wind direction's wrong. Temperature. Okay, thermals. Okay, morning, afternoon hunt. Okay, deer movement, terrain feature, staging areas. And then finally it's just like, and then I'm able to make these decisions of where I want to hunt, not only based off historical data, but also based off of, you know, current intel and just straight up terrain features that I've hunted before that dictate deer movement, and have just, like, you ever seen some of these videos of some of the biggest names in the industry on some of these farms? They're hunting the same, they're shooting hunting the same location every single year. Right. And most of the bigger names are hunting out of box blinds and food plots and things like that. But like some of the guys, they'll go into a place, they know that's they know it's gonna provide at some point, because it's just a good terrain feature. It's a low point in a field. They know the deer's there. It's just a matter of that deer coming through that funnel or that fence crossing at some point throughout the year. You just have to be there to connect the dots.
October lull, myth or real?
You know, I don't know for sure. I kind of think there is some truth to it. I think they still move, just based on what I've read and everything. They move about the same amount. They just don't travel as far, and so it gives the impression that they're not doing anything. But if you can get into their core area, then you could see them. You know, we're talking about bucks. I think does move the same amount all year. You know, they do what they do. But I mean, so I'd say there is some truth to it. It's just distance, you know, distance traveled away from one location. You know, they still probably move the same amount. And so, yeah, there's that,
so
that to it.
Kind of, now I'm going to have three, but with what you said there, would you start pushing in closer to bedding then this time of year?
Well, I try to hunt near bedding as much as possible where it's feasible.
Okay.
And then I'll hunt, like, travel areas coming from bedding to feeding, if I can position myself there. One of my favorite spots to hunt in Minnesota that I was hoping to get to this week is right on the edge of bedding, like right on the edge, where the deer are probably bedded, 50 or 60 yards away from me. That's one of the spots I like to hunt. But during this time of year, if you're worried about deer ranging out, they're not going to range out as much. Hunt those bedding areas are real tight to them.
Nice.
I've got one to piggyback off of that just really quick. So with you hunting on the ground and hunting tight to bedding, because that's something that I like to do too, all throughout the whole year. But like, what's a tip you would give to somebody to being quiet, just navigating through the woods? Because I feel like that's, especially when you're trying to get close to bedding. I mean, like you bump them out, the game's over.
My favorite thing is I used to hate wind when I was deer hunting, and now I've realized how beneficial it is, and the deer don't seem to mind. You just got to be, more aware, and because call it being lazy. I used to love those quiet evenings where I could just sit there and just listen and hear something moving. But it's so beneficial to have the wind. Like I can think of a recent hunt where I needed to get to about 60 yards of where I thought the buck was bedded. And it wasn't because I wanted to be that close. It was because the only suitable spot to set up was right there. And it was windy and a little bit of a breeze, and it would be a gust. And so I was using that to help me move closer through the cover. So if you can go on a windier day, that's nice. And plus, when it's windy, you don't have to worry about the thermal switch as much in the evening, because it'll be a nice steady wind to keep your scent going away from them.
What is your take on moon phase?
It's irrelevant.
You think?
It's I've always thought it was irrelevant, but
yeah,
I like a full moon because it helps me get in and out of the woods in the dark.
Yep.
But and it's just my thought that I never saw anything beneficial as far as any increased movement, or I didn't notice any. And now it seems like GPS studies, and then the fella has that thermal drone. He's doing those YouTube videos. I'm sure you know who I'm talking about, Derek. Whitetail research, whatever it is, he's seeing the same thing, that phase doesn't matter. It's just evenings and mornings and etc.
Yep.
Yeah, the only thing I feel like, I love a full moon too, getting in and out. The only thing I think that's been a disadvantage sometimes is where they can see you a little bit better, because it's still kind of that awkward twilight. But I'm on the same boat. I've just come to realize that weather trumps everything, in my opinion.
Yeah, I will say this, and this may not even be true, but I like a full moon when I'm going there to hunt in the morning, because in my mind, I always think that, okay, deer start to see that it's getting just a little bit of light in the eastern horizon, and they start heading back to their bed. And when you have a full moon, they don't realize it's starting to get light, and so they're just a little bit later getting back to bed. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. They'd have to look at, the researchers would have to pin down like 15 minutes, 30 minutes, does it make that much of a minor difference? But to me, that in my mind is like, okay, that's benefiting me. I can get there, and by the time they get to the bed, it'll be daylight, and I can shoot them.
So what are those like alarm bells that start going off in your head when you start looking at then like weather or just conditions? Like when is it when all of a sudden something comes up and you're like, oh, I need to be in the woods this weekend or these 2 days?
In general, there's nothing. I'm just looking for weather that suits me. I like, I'm not as diehard as some people when it comes to deer hunting. I enjoy it, but I want to be comfortable out there.
Yeah, that's right.
But one thing I've noticed that applies, I think, to all animals, deer and turkeys, is if you get those like 2 or 3 days in a row of just cool, dreary, misty days, and it's just awful, and then you get that day that's sunny and calm and nice, there's a lot more movement on those days, it seems like.
Sure.
Turkeys are more active, they're more responsive, they're gobbling more. Deer, I get out there that first day afterwards, and the deer just seem to be, the amount of deer I see just goes up. They're just happy they got a nice day.
I was going to say, they got to be in a chipper mood, because it's like, man, we just got snowed on for 3 days, and it's finally like nice.
Yeah.
What would Cody Butler's magical formula be for, deciding to pick a spot, if it's a combination of weather, what trail cameras are showing you, that kind of thing?
Yeah. So, I mean, I definitely think going off cameras helps.
Mm-hmm.
I think once you get further into the season, I think cameras definitely help early in the year. Just trying to get a deer on a pattern. When things start getting a little closer to the rut, obviously that can change. You know, they're going to maybe tell you he's in the area, but then at that time, you just kind of got to use your woodsmanship and go off of that, and find maybe specific funnels, areas that narrow down to where deer are going to go through. And one thing that I've really went off of is just history with the deer. I mean, we don't usually try to start targeting anything until it's 5 or 6 years old around here.
Mhm.
So by then, I've usually got a pretty decent idea of how that deer moves, how he travels, what he's doing. And one thing that I will say I think is extremely overlooked is every deer has a different personality. There is very aggressive deer. There's deer that are extremely passive. Um, I've had really good luck late October killing deer maybe with rattling horns, getting close to where I think he's bedding and making him mad, and come out basically that type of stuff, just making him think another buck's invading his home range.
Right.
I think that can be really a good thing, but you've got to know if that deer's aggressive by going off of past history. Some
Mhm.
deer that I've hunted in the past, and I think one of the most difficult deer to kill is the passive type bucks that maybe don't like to be around other deer. They don't like to fight as much. They're just, for example, that deer that my buddy Will from Hunt Stand killed last year. He got 7.5 years old, and I think I saw that deer once or twice ever, and my neighbors only saw him maybe 2 or 3 times
Okay.
in his whole lifetime. He was just really hard to pin down, moved a lot at night. He was never with any other bucks, it seemed like, on the trail cameras. He was just a super loner deer. Would
Mhm.
always shed his velvet the last. He would be one of the last deer to shed his velvet. Will actually killed him in velvet, like clear into the 12th or something like that of
Wow.
September, which is just very rare around here. And
Yeah.
he came in with a bunch of does. I mean, he was a big, muscular. I mean, gosh, he was probably pushing 300 pounds in September when he shot.
Jeez.
I mean, just a giant. Will's from Texas. He walks up to the deer. He's like, "My gosh, look at the size of this!" Like he just couldn't
What did
believe how
he
big
eat?
it was. But
Yeah.
I just really think learning the deer himself, how he moves and his personality and stuff, and sometimes you got to be aggressive on him, and sometimes you've got to be, a little more passive. I think time of year really is a thing you need to look at too, as far as when you want to get aggressive. When you get closer to the rut, you can obviously get away with a little bit more. I used to be a very passive hunter. I feel like since probably I hunted a deer in 2017 that really taught me a lot, and I finally killed him just getting more aggressive with him.
Okay.
And since then, I feel like I've killed most of the deer. I would say I kill in the very first or second time in, because I just really try to learn him specifically, and then I'll
Mhm.
only hunt him on a day that I think I can kill him, and that usually is maybe weather. I'm a big, big, big believer in the red moon. I
Okay.
bet I've killed seriously 90% of the bucks that I've killed in the last 6 or 7 years on red moon days.
Interesting.
I I'm not saying it's a foolproof thing, but I just going off of trail cameras and really kind of studying when I'm getting daylight pictures of deer, and stuff
Mhm.
like that. It just seems like, at least in my area, there's something to that.
Okay.
So yeah, know when to get aggressive. I think, 10 years ago, I was just trying to be in the woods as much as I possibly could.
Mhm.
I think now I spend way, way, way less time hunting and more time trying to figure out what deer I'm going after. And then, going off weather, going off time of the year and stuff like that, and knowing when to move in and get aggressive. Like I said, I hunted that deer 2 times and killed him. Sitting in here looking at some of these deer, I mean, truly, and I'm not saying I didn't hunt that deer more than once, but I definitely feel like I kill almost every deer that I kill the first or second time into that specific stand. I
Mhm.
don't like to burn out stands. I like to hunt them just to where I know I've got a very high chance of either having an encounter or getting him down.
Sure.
So
So
kind of just
do you?
make a
Do,
strategy, I guess, and know
yeah.
when to get aggressive and move in. Don't just go
Yeah.
hunting because you got a picture of him,
Right.
close to daylight. I know a lot of times maybe you get a picture of him right close to, you're like, oh, he might daylight tomorrow, I'm going to go hunt him. But if you would just look at the weather, maybe 3-4 days from now, you're going to get that perfect wind and the temperature is going to drop 15 degrees. That's the day to move in.
Okay. Love that. So going off of that, are you, you talked about, burning tree stands out. Are you, do you have some permanent spots always, or do you usually kind of just hang and bang as you see fit?
I've done both. So I
Mhm.
tried for like 2 years. I basically pretty much completely mobile hunted. I just moved
Yep.
around and was very successful doing that. But with us owning most of our farms now, having kids now,
Mm-hmm.
to where sometimes I've just got to bust butt out the door and go get in a tree.
Right.
Most of the farms that I have now, I still keep a mobile setup just in case I need to make a move. But most of the properties we hunt now are just completely set up to where I can just go jump in. And I've got like some small, well, like our smallest farm, a little 40 we have in Kansas. I've got 6 stands on just that little 40 acres for every possible situation.
Sure.
So in it, not everybody's going to be able to do that. But
Mhm.
one thing I found out, most of the farms we hunt are small too. They're 40s, 60s, 80s, 160s. One thing I did run into a little bit with the mobile hunting on some small farms is it was a little tough to get in and out sometimes without bumping deer,
Yep.
especially if I was trying to get aggressive and get close to a bed or something like that. But
Just making too much noise, or?
yeah, well, yeah,
Mhm.
just that, and how our properties lay and different things. A lot of times deer can bed and see you coming from a long ways, if that makes sense. So
Yep.
you've
Absolutely.
just gotta really just be careful, I guess.
For sure.
And like I said, with kids and stuff, it's hard to do it as easy as I used to.
Yeah.
I can't get up at 4 a.m. and go hang a stand in the dark quite as easy as I used to.
Thanks again, guys, for listening. That's going to wrap it up for this week's episode of Chasing the Rut. Huge thanks again to Dan Johnson, Shane Simpson, and Cody Butler for sharing their wisdom and hopefully giving you guys a few ideas to try out the next time you climb into a stand. As we move deeper into October, things are only continuing to get better and better as bucks start daylighting, scrapes are going to start popping up everywhere, and it's about to break loose. Make sure you're following along with Wild Faith on all of our channels and stay tuned in each week as we bring more real-time reports, tactics, and stories straight from the woods. We'd also love to hear from you. Shoot us a message or tag us and let us know what you're seeing out there. And until next time, stay safe, hunt hard, and keep chasing the rut.